All right, so welcome to part 2 of the Granny Square Club for the, how did we decide this is pronounced? Hygge? Hug? Ingrid? Come on.
She has it like pronounced in her. It's like Hygge, something like that.
Hygge, Hygge. Burst pillow.
Swedish, not Danish.
Oh, there you go. So today we're going to talk about, I'm going to talk real quick about weaving in your ends and about how to do her particular continuous join as you go process. So I will say in the pattern, in your online or your digital pattern, you can click on, let me just get to that page. It's on page 6. And she does have an excellent video on how she does it. She's very good with the video. She talks slowly. Her picture is very clear on how she does this method. So just know that that is part of your pattern. And I would highly recommend using it because my little test subjects this morning, we went through that together. So that was great. So before we talk about joining as you go, I'm going to just take a second and talk about how to weave in your ends, because Polly had asked, and I know somebody asked this morning. So let me share. Okay. So here is a finished square up through round 4. So here's what I did. I did try to, after, I believe we talked about this last month, after the center, I did try to crochet over my ends as much as possible to try to weave them in, but you're still left with ends at the end. I will say, if you are doing the magic ring, I always weave this end in. Because it can adjust and loosen up, and I wanted all of my centers to be tight. So I did tighten that one up, and I left here a couple here that I didn't get done. And I go around the circle. It's pretty tight because there's so many in there. They're tight, which is nice because it helps hold that yarn in place. And I go underneath, close to the center where it's the tightest. And maybe go around the whole circle. And maybe split the yarn once or twice if you have a yarn that that would work well with, because that also helps secure it. I feel like I'm back at the beginning. And I feel like that's not going anywhere now. And I could trim that. I'm not going to trim it because it's going to be on the inside of a pillow. I don't want it to show, but I also don't have to trim it super, super short, just enough so that it doesn't show. So that's for the center round. These other rounds, I did try to remember to crochet over my ends. So I'm going to start at one of the, let's see. This one did I? This one I did. And this is how I can tell. If I pull on it, I can see it's pulling from over here. So I did crochet over it. But I'm going to just secure it a little bit more, just to finish it off. And what I'll do is I'll go back down into its same color. So I'm on the back side. And I'm just going to kind of tuck it in to that puff stitch a little bit. And I'm almost kind of whip stitching around and I feel like that's enough. Now for here was like beginning of round, and I could see that because here's the start of my slip knot that was on my hook. So it does have a knot, which is great. So it's not really going to come undone, but I also don't want to leave a super short tail that could come undone. So I'll do the same thing. I'm just going to go into this back side, and I'm not going all the way through. I'm just staying on the stitches on the back side of the same color. And maybe I'll turn it and just go a little bit of a different direction into the next one. I don't want to distort the stitch, so I kind of pull it back out. And then I feel like I can trim that, and that's going to be okay. So that's how I deal with the ends. If I can, I crochet over them, and I feel like that takes care of a lot of it. And then I just take maybe an inch worth and weave it into its same color, and then I call it a day. Okay. So, oh, and this one here, your finish, this is where we finish the round. So I did slip stitch several stitches across here, and I still have this little bit of a tail that's going to be loose. I should have left more of a tail because it's hard to, you can either use a hook, but I just, because I know I'm going to be doing another round over it, and I have slip stitched it a little, I'm just going to pull it to the back side, and I know I'm going to be making stitches over it, and I'll just leave it like that. Maybe pull it a little further down, but it's pretty secure. Another question that somebody asked this morning is about blocking these. I did not block them. We still have another round to go, so it seemed like that was kind of a waste. What I feel like I will, unless you feel like your squares are of a drastically different size, and they shouldn't be if you're using all the same yarn and the same hook. If you feel like they're a drastically different size, I would guess that maybe you picked up the wrong hook for some of them. So check that. But they should be all pretty darn close, just kind of by stacking them. And I feel like that's good. When they're all sewn together, if you feel like you want to smooth it out, because I'm doing a cotton, I'll just iron it a little or give it a little steam, smooth it out if I feel like it needs it. Otherwise, I probably won't do anything to it. So that's blocking for this. We'll see how much it stretches over the pillow, because that might just smooth it out, the stretch part of it. So with that, I'll just kind of wait and see. All right, so let me share with you what I did first. I did all 16 of my squares here. And let me share instead photos. Here we go. So what I did is I laid out all of my squares. Can you guys see that? Yeah, okay, good. So I laid out all the squares, and I decided what order I wanted to have them for my pillow. So some people were making their squares all the same, so in which case it doesn't matter. But I used, several colors, and I changed them for each one. And what I didn't want to do is have two, like this one has a dark border and this one has a dark border. I didn't really want to have them next to each other. So I laid them all out. We talked this morning about somebody was trying to pick out a joining color because she's using some scrap yarn. So when you lay it out like this, sometimes taking a picture and seeing it via a picture can really change your perspective. I kind of like the way this looks. I might have maybe decided not to have, it looks like there's 3 dark circles in a row here, but ultimately I'm fine with it. But we talked about using the black and white feature on your phone or wherever you look at your photos. If you were to switch this to black and white, you would be able to see where your lights and your darks fall and get an idea if it's very dark heavy or very light heavy, and maybe what you would want to add to join it. So just know that that's always an option when you're putting colors together to see if they're, how they're really going to show up. Using the black and white feature can really help. And then you come back to the original to see it in color. So I was happy with the color layout, and I kept my picture because I want to make sure none of my squares I think are the same. And I want to make sure that I put them together in this order. So I kept the picture so I would remember, because now I've moved them around 100 times. So I've already had to to change that. So, all right, let me stop that and go back to my camera. Well, before I do that, all right, so the continuous join as you go that she shares here, hold it, and this is my first row that I've completed, and I'm using a darker gray as my joining color. So I'm going to demonstrate it kind of step by step and pick out the parts that I think you need. I'm going to try to, so you don't have to watch me do a whole row at one time. I wanted to finish one. It really is, it's really very easy. It's a little, I would say, fiddly, but I think it makes a really nice it's a nice tight join, and I'll show it on the camera in a second. It gives you like this little zigzag detail, which I kind of like. Know that you don't have to do it this way. You could, there are lots of ways to join granny squares, and you can do it any way you want, but doing it all at once, you have no ends to weave in for the join. Okay, it's one continuous join, which that was a bonus for me. So let me get the pattern out and my glasses back on. And let's go back to this camera. Okay, so in her pattern, we'll start there. She does show on page 6 here. She's got the directions for how to assemble the pillow. And she really doesn't give you much written direction. She refers to the video. So I'm going to go through the stuff that's not in the video. But I am going to point out that this little diagram that she has here in the corner with the arrows, what doesn't make a whole lot of sense until you do this class or watch the video. Then it makes a whole lot of sense, okay? So know that you can refer back to this little diagram. And then again, down here is the, if you just click on here, zoom back out. If you click right here where it says how to crochet the tight continuous join as you go, she's demonstrating it for her blanket, but it's the same principle. And she does 4 squares, so it goes pretty quick, but you can, you'll see how you do it in rows. Okay, so that's what I'm going to show you today. So let's pick. So what I did is I started with my picture and all of my squares. And let's see here. Let's go back to. Let me find something that has all the squares on it. That's not going to work. Let's go back to my picture. I'm going to go back to my picture here. Okay, so you're going to start, get all of your squares laid out the way you want them. And I found the easiest way was to stack them. You can number them if you want them to stay in this particular order, but you're going to start with the top right-hand corner, okay? That's where we're going to start the join. So I took of this first row that goes all the way across, these 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I stacked them on top of each other. So 1 on top of 2, 2 on top of 3, 3 on top of 4. And then this one here is 5, 6, 7, 8. Back over to the right side, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then 13, 14, 15, 16. So it always starts on the right and moves to the left each row. And that's how I stacked them, because that's the order in which we're going to join them. Does that make sense? So that's what I did. It's hard to show that when I'm on the camera because I've already started to join them. Let's see, share that. Okay. Okay, so here's the first row, and this was the first square, and I started up here in this corner. So I'm just going to pretend that I'm starting over. Here's my first square, and then here's my second square that I'm going to join. What could be handy? She does it with a kind of a standing double crochet in the video. I'm just going to do a regular slip, start with a slip knot on my hook, slip stitch in a corner space to join it, and I'm going to chain 2, okay? And that's going to count as the first double crochet of the corner space. So from now on, we're only working in double crochets. A traditional granny stitch is 3 double crochets together, and that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to make a full corner here, which is 3 double crochets, a chain 2, and 3 double crochets. So there's the first half of the corner. Chain 2 and 3 double crochets. Oh, that's very loose. Let me just pull out some yarn now so I'm not doing this constantly. And if I was smart, I would be going over my tail at the same time, but I didn't remember to do that. So that one I will have to weave in, but that will be the only one because we won't have to stop. Okay. All right, so I've got the first corner done. Now I'm going to go into the next space. You know, we didn't make chain spaces, but the clusters, there are spaces in between the clusters. And that's where we're going to be making 3 double crochets. Because we've got on our previous row triples here, be careful. I accidentally, without really paying too much attention, went in between 2 triples as opposed to between the triple and the set of doubles. So make sure you're going in the space between the triples and the set of doubles and put 3 double crochets. And into the next. 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 Don't go in between the triples because they're so loose. So it is it's easy to do. You're going to go ahead and make a regular corner space here. So 3 doubles, chain 2, 3 doubles. And I really wanted to have this first square done, but then the day got away from me. 1, 2. And we're going to go down this side as well. Don't go in between the triples, because that's a nice big gap between those tall triples. So just be careful there. Okay. If you felt like on your round 4, when you did those doubles and then half doubles and then doubles again, there was a little bit of a dip, this evens it all out. Okay. All right, and when you get to, so far what we've done is I made a full corner, we've gone across one side, we've come down the second side, and now I'm at the second corner. I'm only going to make half of the corner here. So I'm going to do 3 doubles. 1, 2, whoop, try that again. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to chain 2, but I am not going to make the other half of the double. Okay, pull that so it doesn't come undone. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work, I'm going to make a lighter one so it's a little easier to see. I'm going to work the same thing on this side and join it to this side at the same time. So the tops of the doubles that we just made is where we're going to be doing some slip stitches. So the beginning of any project, the beginning is always fiddly. So I've got my, I've got my chain 2 right here. What I'm going to do then is what's called a standing double crochet or yarn, which means I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to go into the chain space, the corner chain space of my next square. I'm going to go in and grab my yarn and then finish my double crochet. And so I'm going to stop right there and then turn it so you can see how this is going. Okay. So I did half of a double, half of a corner space here and a chain 2, and the chain 2 is right here in between. And then I made a standing double crochet into this corner space here. Okay. Now, what I want to do, guarantee you that's someone in my family who forgets that I do a class. I want to go into, hold on one second here. That would stop ringing. There it goes. I want to go into slip stitch and join into the top of that last double crochet we made right there. Okay. Let me make it a tad lighter. There we go. So you can see. So this is a little bit fiddly. And what it's going to do is it's going to create a little bit of a nub out of this chain 2, but that's okay. So I finished my double crochet over here. I'm going to come into the top underneath both loops, top of that double crochet, and I'm going to slip stitch it, which means I'm just going to pull all the way through. Now I'm going to go back to my new square and I'm going to make the second double crochet of that corner. I'm going to ignore this little nub of stuff down here. Don't worry about that. I'm going to go back to the first square and the top of the double crochet of the second one, I'm going to slip stitch it. So I went in and I'm going in from the front, yarning over, pulling through both. Now I'm going to make my last double crochet in my new square and go back to my original square. I'm going to stop right there and I'm going to zoom in just a little for you. So here is, let me use this. Here is the top of the third double crochet. You can make your slip stitch into that. What she recommends in the video and what she does in the video is set it's right above the space that's between the two clusters. Just go into the space. You will never be able to tell. And I feel like when you've got the top of a stitch over a space, it's really hard to catch just the loops. So I feel like just go into the space. So essentially what you're doing, I'm always staying on the front side. I'm not coming from behind. I'm just going to go into that space, wrap my yarn, and pull it through to slip stitch. Making sure I'm coming all the way through. So what you're doing is you're making a stitch on this side and you are slip stitching it to its corresponding stitch on the first square. And then you're going back and making another stitch and then slip stitching to the top of its corresponding stitch. And then on the third double crochet, I'm slip stitching into the space instead of the top of the stitch, just because it's easier. Okay, so this is the first part joined. It looks a little messy right here. Don't worry about it. Okay, it is supposed to have a little bit of a zigzag. Let me show you one that's finished real quick so you get an idea. That's the back. Hold on. It's going to give a little bit of a zigzag join. Let me zoom out just. There we go. So here were the double crochets from the original. Here were the double crochets, and then they slip stitched to the top. And we're going to go all the way across. Okay. Let's come back over here. So now I'm going to go over to my next space, and I'm going to do 3 double crochets. And as I make each one, I'm going to do a slip stitch join to its corresponding partner over here. So yarn over. I did find that it looked a little sloppy until I started to do my slip stitches a little tighter, and that helped really tighten it up. So when you do this first one into the top of the stitch, remember when you are, I'm just going to turn it sideways so you can see better. When you are working in the round, like on a granny, when you're not flipping it over front to back, the top of a stitch is always to the right of the post of the stitch. So here's the next double crochet that I want to go into. The top of the stitch is always going to be leaning to the right of it. So there's the top of the first one, the top of the second one. Here's the top of the third one, but we're just going to go into the space because they're so close to each other and it's easier. If you're going back and forth, you know, turning your piece over and working both sides, then the top of your stitch is always going to be to the left. But when you're going in the round, it's always going to be to the right, and that's how you can identify it. When you go into that space, make sure you're hitting, I kind of pulled my slip stitch over a little bit, so I make sure I'm getting into the top of that first stitch and I'm not skipping it. So I've made 1 double over here. I'm going to slip stitch into the top of the first double over there. Make another double over here. Slip stitch the top here. Third. And I'm going to slip stitch into the space, because that's just easier. So now you can see what this kind of join does, as opposed to other kinds of continuous join, is it pairs these clusters right across from each other instead of being offset. Often you'll just go into you'll slip stitch into the space in between them only, and that makes them offset. This makes a nice tight join and puts the double crochet clusters right across from each other. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to continue up all the way up to the top here. And so there I had just gone into the space. So I'm just kind of pulling it out to make sure I'm not skipping my first stitch. I will also say that this is very forgiving. There were a couple places where I did miss that first one and I went into the second, and it looked fine. Because it's got this nice zigzag, it kind of hides a lot of errors if need be. And one more. And then into the space. So once you get past this beginning fiddly, I will say that fiddly part, it does go fairly quick. One and one. Oh, see, I skipped it. I skipped the first one on this one. Because I'm going to do the next one, and the next one available is the top of the third one, so I did miss it on that one. So let's just take that one back. So I should have gone here, and I had gone here. Let's try that one again. There it is, right there. Top of the second. And then one more. And into the space. All right. I want to just show you how to do the next corner. So I want to get to there. Pull that over a little bit, make sure I'm getting into first.
Pam, can I ask you a question?
Please do.
At the beginning, you talked about a standing crochet, double crochet.
Yeah.
How is that different from a regular crochet, and where did you use it?
I'll show you in 1 second.
Okay.
Yep. So I will say, as I'm working over there, a standing double crochet is where you're creating a double crochet, or you can do a standing single crochet, where you're doing it where you don't have a slip stitch already attached to your hook, or where you're not already attached to a place where you want to make the stitch at. So I'll demonstrate it for you again here in 1 second.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. So now I'm into the corner here. So I'm going to do the first half of the corner, corresponding over here. And then corresponding. Okay. And then I'm going to just go into that center space to slip stitch to join. I'm just going to stop there real quick. Okay. Zoom out so you can see a little bit better. There we go. Okay. So what I've done is I've done the first half of this corner, and I've joined it to the first half of this corner. And I've slip stitched into the center space. I'm only going to chain 1 here. And then I'm going to make the second half of this corner over here. And that chain 1 allows it to lay very flat. If I had done a chain 2, it would be a little nubby here. And then I'm going to work across this one exactly the same. I have nothing to join it to. I'm just making 3 double crochets, 3 double crochets, 3 double crochets, just like we did on this first square. And I'm going to come down this side. And then I'm going to be ready to join the next square in the same way. So if you were making a blanket, you could go all the way across and make your row. Let me bring that pattern back. So here's what she means. Yep. So now the arrows are going to make a little more sense. Hopefully you can see that. So the arrows, and you can see it better obviously in your pattern. This is very small. She says to start here and go this way. And then we work down this way. And then we joined this one and worked up. And then you work across. And then you work down. And then we join this one and we come up. And then we go across here. And you could keep going until, you know, for however many that you have. So that's how the arrows work here. When you get to the end, and you come down here, there's one arrow that goes all the way back across. And you're just going to do the 3 clusters all the way across. Let me show you, because that's where this piece is at right now. This is where I started. Okay, this will be the hard part because it's so big. Let me zoom out and angle it just a little. Okay. So here are my 4 squares. I started here, went down and did my clusters, and then I added this square, slip stitched as I went. I stopped here, I chained 1, finished the corner. I went all the way across and down, and then I added this square, my 3rd one. Got up to the top as I slip stitched and joined the exact same way, worked across this one, came down and made my clusters. Started my slip stitch here, up, over, and down. Okay, so you just keep doing that until it's, if you're making a blanket, as many as you want across your first row. Once you are all the way across your first row, just going to turn it. I am going to do clusters all the way across. Okay. And that's what that arrow, this long arrow that she has. So I have, let's zoom in a little here. I had done half the square there. I am going to go ahead and do, I believe I wrote it down. Hold on. I am going to do a half a square. I am going to do a chain 2 here. 1, 2. Okay. I just want to show what happens when you get to here. That's where we had that chain 2 that we skipped, and it made a little bit of a nub when we first started to join. I want to show you how to deal with that. And then everything else is really pretty, it's the same thing over and over again until all your squares are joined. Okay, so now I'm to the corner, and that's where I cut my yarn. Good on me. Let me just grab. I'm just going to pull that through. One here. Okay. All right, so I've only got half of a corner here. So I'm going to make the other half of the corner. So 1 double, 2 doubles, 3 doubles. Okay. Now to get across here, let's just zoom in a little. And I'm going to chain 1. I am going to locate right here is that chain 2 that we made before we went over here and made our first double over here. I'm going to slip stitch into that chain 2 space. And then I'm going to chain 1 more. And then I can make the other half of this corner. And I'll show you how that looks. It really brings it together nice and tidy. So it makes, besides my little yarn join here, it does make a nice, it joins and it pulls this up so it's nice and tight. And I've got both my corner spaces and it makes it nice and neat. So then I'll continue on making my clusters. I'll make half this corner, I'll chain 1. And I just used a little darning needle to make sure I was getting into that chain 2 space, which is, sometimes it gets a little, that first part is so fiddly, it's right here. So I'll slip stitch into that chain 2 space, make the other half of this corner, continue on, do the same thing here, continue on. And now here's the beauty. Let me zoom out. So that will get me all the way to here. I've gone all the way around my first row. All of this will be covered. And then I can start my second row the same way. So I haven't cut any yarn. This side right here will be unfinished. Where we started, this side right here will remain unfinished. So when I get down here, I'll do half of a corner space. And then I'll go in here and slip stitch, chain 2, make my first double here, slip stitch it to here, and go back and forth just like we did, and work my way back across the row, just like I did. So going back to the little squares. So working across, we went this way, up and down, and then worked all the way across to here. And then we work this way, joining. Sorry, wish my camera was faster. There we go. So I'll go all the way across here, joining it to this side. And then I'm going to do my, just work into this side without any joining because I don't have my other one yet. Once this side is completed with the clusters, I can add my second one, and then I'll join it here. This one will have its clusters on it, and I'll join it this way. So now you're joining here, you're joining here and here, and then you'll continue on, and then you'll make a new row of clusters, and then you'll join here and here. Does that make sense? Let me go back to the picture. I should have drawn this bigger. We can do it this way. I did actually, for my notes here, let's see if this helps a little. Okay. So we started right here, and we went this way and this way. And then we went back up joining, and then we created more clusters this way. And then we went back up joining, and we went this way. We made more clusters down. We joined, we came back up, made more clusters, went down. And then we made clusters all the way across to here. Okay. And then we're going to make clusters here, joining it to this one here. Then we're going to make clusters here. And then we're going to make clusters here, joining at the same time to this one. We're going to join to the top here, make new clusters here, join them here, join across the top, make new clusters, join them here, join them here, make new clusters, work all the way back across. Again, here, 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 and here will remain unfinished. And then we'll repeat the same thing. We'll make new clusters on this block 9, joining it to the top of block 5. We'll make new clusters here. We'll join them here, make new clusters, join them here and here, make new clusters, join it here and here, make new clusters, and make new clusters go all the way across. Same thing here. We'll, excuse me, join, make new clusters, join, make new clusters, join, make new clusters, join, make new clusters, go all the way back. And then when you're done, you go all the way up the side, just like you did across here. You'll make the clusters and join all of these sides. So you have no yarn ends to weave in. Does that make sense? Good. So now her arrows on her diagram make a lot more sense. Her video is excellent at this, by the way. If you find this confusing, I would suggest watching hers, because then I think this will also make more sense. But you're adding clusters to one side and then joining them on the next. So make sure you just got plenty of yarn, and you won't have any ends to weave in for your joining. So I know Polly has had that question. I'm going to answer Polly's question before I answer more questions. For a standing double crochet, let me find a couple squares I started with here. All right, so I have to take this out anyway. Okay. So when you get to the end of this square, you're going to chain 2. You're only doing half of the corner space, and you're going to chain 2. And then we need to make a double crochet here in this space, but we're not attached there yet. So when you're not already attached there with a slip stitch or a previous stitch, then you're doing what's called a standing crochet. I could slip stitch it. That's one way to do it, is to slip stitch it. And now I'm joined, and I could make a double crochet. That's one way to do it. Another way, let me take that out, is to do what's called a standing double crochet, which means I'm going to start my double crochet. I'm going to yarn over. Now I'm going to go into the front of the stitch, grab my yarn, and finish my double crochet. You can do this with any stitch. So I've joined it in the middle of the making of the stitch. I wasn't already attached. I started my stitch. If you were doing a single crochet, of a standing single crochet, I would just go in, yarn over, pull through both, and that would be a standing single crochet. There's just not a slip stitch or another stitch already attached there. Does that make sense, Polly? Yeah, okay. Good, good, good. Other questions? No? Okay. Let me see what else I had here. I found that this did go pretty darn quick. Once I got going on it, the row that I did really only took maybe 5 minutes to get across one row. So once you get the hang of that slip stitch, and you realize that if you miss a space or don't get it exactly right, it honestly doesn't matter. because of the way it kind of zigzags and crosses. If you miss one or in the wrong space, unless you're drastically off and continue to be off, then it would really show. But if you're off on one stitch, it's not going to matter. She does give instructions on how, like, she gives you the highlights here. Let me drop this just a hair. So while she doesn't tell you exactly how to do it, she does give you the notes about following the tutorial, about chaining 2 in the corners. The only time you don't chain 2 in the corner is when you're coming back across and you're doing going into that chain 2 space, which is what she's kind of talking about here. You do your double crochets and then do a chain 1, a slip stitch, and a chain 1. Otherwise, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Now, I haven't gotten to the part where I've put it on my pillow, which I'm going to show you, but I did want to show you. Let me stop sharing that really quick. One thing we found in class today. And I think I'm going to try to figure it out to do is on the video that she links to. She's showing you how to do the blanket. She adds a border. So she's showing you all of the blanket. Hold on. Let me get to a good spot on the video. Yeah.
This particular join is really
Pause. Okay. So she adds this little detail to her blanket, this little bobble detail. So this is the border. She did the same squares for her blanket, and then she added a border round in her joining color as well. And then she added a second color and did this little detail, which I'm going to find because I thought that would be so cute on the edging of the pillow. So I'm going to try that on my pillow. If I can figure out how to do it without buying a pattern, I'm going to put it in I'll make a PDF and I'll let you guys know. I'll put it up here on the website. I can't remember if this is I just didn't get a chance to check today. I just thought that might be a really cute detail once, and Ingrid and I were talking about it today, once it's on your pillow, that you could do it even after it's on the pillow. Some people were gonna had talked about previous people who've made this pattern. Those are some people I'm talking about. Used a button to join their pillow in the back. And she's got really clear directions about how to fold it. I'm going to stitch it on. I'm not ever going to take this off the pillow. If it gets dirty, the whole thing's going in the wash. But I think once it's on, it will be clear where the edges are. And I think that would be so cute to add an accent color with little they're just like little extra chains that look like a little bobble. I just thought that would be a fun accent to add. So on page of your pattern, she talks all about how you're going to fold it to create the pillow and how to stitch it on. I'm going to stitch it on. I'm not going to add a button. I'm not going to make mine removable. And she's got the video if you need more help on how to do it, but you're going to do it the same way. I just thought that was a fun little accent to add. So that's all I had. I'm going to stop recording real quick.